Thank you for joining us for this look at some of the best stories from KPBS News this week. I'm John Carroll. Coming up, how is San Diego going to climb out of its major money hole? The mayor's updated budget plan is already being criticized by those who will ultimately have to vote for it. Paying it forward. David's HARP is putting a billionaire's gift to good use. See how they're giving local at-risk youth the support needed to thrive. And Chula Vista has been waiting a long time for this weekend. See the new Gaylord Pacific Resort as it opens for business. We start with a KPBS investigation. Immigration lawyers say asylum seekers are increasingly being denied due process. Gustavo Solis has the story of one disabled man in a San Diego area detention center.
A deaf and mute Mongolian man has spent more than 80 days at the Otay Mesa Detention Center. His sister, a U.S. citizen, is willing to sponsor him, but the federal government is trying to deport him. Andrea Montavon McKillip is the man's immigration lawyer. She says this case is an example of how President Donald Trump's executive orders have eliminated due process protections. She says her client crossed the border at San Diego in February and immediately turned himself in to Border Patrol agents.
He gave them a letter that was written in Mongolian and translated into English, and they refused to accept it. They refused to even look at it. And that letter explained that he feared returning to Mongolia and wanted to apply for asylum.
KPBS agreed to refer to him by his nickname Bay, due to fears that disclosing his identity would jeopardize his case. The Border Patrol handed Bay over to Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents, who took him to the privately run detention center in Otay Mesa. Bay was placed in a fast-track deportation process called expedited removal. Normally, under expedited removal, people who express fear of returning home are given a screening with a trained asylum officer. If they establish credible fear, they get to see an immigration judge. Trump's executive order removed that screening process. Instead, Bay went through a different assessment without his lawyer present.
The most he could do was write on a piece of paper Mongolia and then use body language to indicate that he's afraid. Okay, that's all he could do.
Montavon McKillip believes that the ICE interpreter used American Sign Language, not Mongolian Sign Language. Bay couldn't understand most of the interpreter's signs.
So he's looking at a sign language interpreter through a screen who he can barely understand. I mean, he understands maybe a few signs here and there.
Yet, the officer determined that Bay was not in danger back home, putting him at risk of being deported.
I think it's a great example of how immigrants are receiving no due process. I mean, you're interviewed in a language you don't understand by someone who works for DHS, as a DHS employee. You're not taken in front of a judge. You don't have anybody neutral or unbiased who's looking at your case.
The executive order that ICE is using to justify this treatment is called Guaranteeing the State's Protection Against Invasion. It portrays immigrants without legal status as a public safety risk. Montavon McKillip says Bay is not a criminal, and there is extensive evidence for him being persecuted in Mongolia.
Because of his disability, he was seen by others in the community as defective, as less than human, and he was beaten severely on multiple occasions by bad actors. He reported them to the police. The police did nothing. These people were never arrested. In one case in 2020, he ended up with a traumatic brain injury. On another occasion, he had bones broken. So there's no protection for him.
KPBS confirmed that Bay is currently in a private detention center run by the company Core Civic. Montavon McKillip says he's been there 80 days. ICE did not immediately respond to a request for comment. According to a 2024 budget analysis, it cost taxpayers, on average, $217 a day to detain someone in San Diego. That's more than $17,000 of taxpayer money spent keeping Bay detained. His sister, Bima, is willing to house him for free.
Yeah, I have a room ready for him, and then I have a nice townhome in Virginia.
Like Bay, Bima asked KPBS not to share her full name. Bima says she's afraid of speaking out, but feels that it's important for other people to hear her brother's story. All she wants is for him to have a fair shot at humanitarian protection.
Give him a chance, to tell his story. So we are asking is fairness on his part.
Bima says her brother feels completely alone in the detention center, mostly because he's unable to communicate with anyone from staff, medical workers, or other detainees.
It's not just that he's been detained, but it's that he's completely cut off from understanding or participating in what's happening to him. So, and that's what breaks my heart.
Earlier this week, Montalban McKillop filed a motion to prevent Bay's deportation. Gustavo Solis, KPBS News.
A Logan Heights parish is joining a lawsuit to keep churches off limits to immigration enforcement. KPBS reporter Katie Hyson visited to see why.
Our Lady of Guadalupe Parish calls itself an immigrant church. In January, the Trump administration took back a long-standing policy that churches, schools, and hospitals were generally off limits to immigration raids and arrests.
That just sent, I would say, fear tremors throughout the community.
That's Reverend Scott Santa Rosa. He says one church member put it this way.
She said, Padre, es como que están cazándonos como si fuéramos animales. It's as if they're hunting us, as if we're animals.
When churches first became fair game for immigration enforcement, Santa Rosa says the pews were noticeably emptier. People were afraid. But then attendance rose again, even higher than before.
A lot of parents who might be undocumented send their children, their adult children, to do errands for them. So the only thing they do is go to work and come to church. But what they can't send their kids to do is to go to church for them. They need to come themselves, and I think they're making that decision, and they're weighing it, and they're taking the risk.
Our Lady of Guadalupe suspended the migrant shelter they used to run out of their community room. Still, Santa Rosa says immigration challenges are consuming them, making it hard for staff to serve in other ways. In a divisive time, he believes the lawsuit will find common ground.
God doesn't really ask questions about whether we have documents or where we were born or whether the President of the United States or a priest or whether we're rich or whether we're poor. God loves us all because we're God's sons and daughters. And I think everyone would agree with that.
The parish is one of 5 plaintiffs in the suit, including 4 religious organizations. Katie Hyson, KPBS News.
This was a big week for how the city of San Diego spends taxpayer money. There's less of it to go around in the upcoming budget cycle. KPBS Metro reporter Andrew Bowen tells us about the latest proposal to balance public services with public safety.
Gloria is still proposing to shutter all city libraries on Sundays and Mondays to help close a deficit of more than $300 million. Plans for paid parking in Balboa Park and new fees for trash collection at single-family homes also haven't changed. But Gloria is backing off a proposal to consolidate police operations in and around Carmel Valley. He's also proposing more modest cuts to the city's animal control contract with the Humane Society.
These are targeted, thoughtful restorations that show that we have listened to the community and that we are prioritizing safety. And that's the crux of this budget. No gimmicks, no Hail Mary passes, just responsible decisions based upon what is best for San Diego's future.
Critics have blasted Gloria's proposal to cut library and rec center hours equally across the city. They say wealthier communities can absorb budget cuts more easily than those with less resources, and that cuts should be tailored to each community's needs. After the revised budget was released, Councilmember Sean Elo Rivera put out a statement saying, quote, "Unfortunately, Mayor Gloria's revised budget continues a troubling trend of overlooking communities that have long been neglected. The mayor failed to deliver for communities that were counting on him, but the fight is not over." Gloria disagrees with that framing and said his budget does make equitable investments in infrastructure and services where they're needed most.
Sometimes people like to pick and choose. Sometimes people want to oversimplify. Sometimes people want to overlook other things that are going on or advance an agenda or a priority they may have. But bottom line is this budget was built with equity at the center of it, and I'm very proud of what is in here, and I believe that's one of the reasons why the City Council will adopt this budget.
The City Council is holding a public hearing on the revised budget proposal on Monday at 6 p.m., with a final vote scheduled for June 10th. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
As we saw in that story, balancing the city's budget isn't easy. From public safety to housing, parks to potholes, every dollar matters. In our new interactive game, you make the tough calls. Raise revenue, cut spending, and choose what San Diego can afford. Can you balance the budget? Play now at kpbs.org/budget challenge or scan the QR code on your screen. Last year, California voters chose to invest more money into behavioral health services. We now know where some of that money will go locally. Tanya Thorne updates us on the impact of Prop 1.
Governor Gavin Newsom is urging California cities to address homelessness with urgency and dignity.
That the public is exhausted by the conversation around behavioral health, conversation around homelessness and the challenges that we face, not just here in California, but all across this country.
He's backing that push with $3 billion in Proposition 1 funding to expand behavioral health housing and treatment options.
They wanted to see action. They want to see results. They wanted to see a kind of intentionality that they haven't seen in the past. And that's what we promised with Proposition 1.
Prop 1 dollars will now go to projects across San Diego County, from tribal land in Palma Valley to National City. The largest award went to Palomar Health Psychiatric Hospital, nearly $50 million to help build a 120-bed facility to address critical behavioral services. That's expected to open in 2026. 3 other nonprofits also got awards, including Casa de Amparo in San Marcos.
It's not easy raising money as a smaller nonprofit organization, but to have the state step in and realize that mental health is critical, it's a bold move.
Kathy Carpe is the CEO of Casa de Amparo. The 11-acre property serves vulnerable youth and foster children. Casa de Amparo received a $19 million award to help build a 16-bed psychiatric residential treatment facility on their property.
Obviously, we will be serving kids that need it, that are already housed in our programs, but we'll be able to open up to the community at large, and you wouldn't have to be system involved, meaning that you wouldn't have to be in the foster care system. If you specifically need mental health services of this nature, we would be able to open that up.
The County of San Diego got 2 separate grants, and 1 more went to Intertribal Wellness in Palma Valley. Not on the list was a controversial detox facility in San Marcos proposed by Interfaith Community Services. The 150-bed facility was proposed to be located near several schools. Interfaith says that project is now suspended. Tanya Thorne, KPBS News.
What would you do if someone gave you $1 million, no strings attached? In 2021, a local nonprofit actually got $1 million from billionaire Mackenzie Scott. KPBS reporter Melissa May told you about David's HARP Foundation when they first found out about the donation. She recently checked in to see how they spent their 7-figure gift.
Welcome to the Transformation Home. Come on in, let's go. Cool. So right here, we have our beautiful kitchen.
For Adrian Quintero, his home for the last 8 months represents something bigger.
Like a true loving ecosystem, like a thriving, I think I look at like plants. There's a lot of plants around here. And I think if you look at a plant that, might be dehydrated or doesn't have enough food, you put it in an ecosystem that's thriving and it's really able to transform it.
He says the Transformation House ecosystem creates a safe community for youth exiting the juvenile justice system, helping prepare them for the future.
What I've been able to see is through a lot of students, they're able to come in and not really understand what they need, but are able to be transformed by community and love and stability in this place, while also setting them up for the future.
Quintero is the house manager, helping residents learn how to live independently.
What it looks like to prep food and actually make your own food, that's a thing. Doing laundry all the time, what does that look like? Cleaning up, doing house chores. And so sometimes as a young person, it's hard to do all these things. And so you need just somebody to be like, hey, all right, guys, we're gonna do this.
It's all part of a program run by the David's HARP Foundation. In addition to giving youth at risk of homelessness a place to live, they teach them essential skills and job training through music and media.
Building relationships through art, earning relationships, and then walking kids back into the community with a trusted adult, a mentor to help them walk them through the process of probation. And really, that's the heart of what this is.
David's HARP is Brandon Stepp's vision.
The challenges of young people as they come back into community from juvenile detention are a lot. Everything from literally from housing to, workforce and job things, but also really connection and relationship.
In 2021, billionaire Mackenzie Scott selected David's HARP to receive a $1 million gift, no strings attached. At first, Stepp didn't know what to do with it. Then one day,
so I was driving downtown, coming down the 94 freeway, coming to our BizPod program where young people are building businesses. And at the time, a little over 60% of those kids were experiencing homelessness. And so you had kids that were coming, showing up, bringing their full self, investing in the skills that they needed to run businesses, but having to figure out where to sleep at night. Sleeping in cars, sleeping in friends' couches and couch surfing. And it just dawned on me, like, we need to be able to build an infrastructure where these kids can really launch out from a house into their own housing. We needed our own house. So that's what we did. We purchased a home.
Currently, 4 youth live at the house, and there are plans for expanding it into a village.
They're able to pay $500 a month in rent. That $500 is saved for them in escrow. And after 12 months, they get all of it back as first, last, and moving on their own space.
While the $1 million went towards purchasing and renovating Transformation House, the foundation has also grown.
We went from 2,000 square feet downstairs to 45, almost 5,000 square feet upstairs here in Moniker Warehouse in the East Village.
Before the donation, the foundation served 220 youth each year. Now they're up to more than 500.
Including 95% of young people in the justice system. So the program is doubled, but it's also doubled in output.
They've also doubled their staff, including graduates of the program.
I have no idea where I would be without David's HARP. Kind of just from being locked up in East Mesa, I kind of just had a vision of what I wanted to do, and I had all my goals written down. I really wanted to be here.
Riley Reynes has grown a lot since we first met him in 2021. He's since graduated from high school and now serves as a full-time artist mentor for David's HARP.
I really just want to help kids who are kind of going through the struggle and just know that it's better on this side of the fence and that you could kind of change and be who you want to be and just be positive with it,
Since 2007, Stepp says the foundation has helped thousands of youth, and that $1 million has helped them have a greater impact.
What we chose to do was to go all in with young people and invest it directly in their future.
Stepp hopes one day soon the courts will consider Transformation House and the foundation's workforce program an official alternative for youth facing incarceration. Melissa May, KPBS News.
For decades, animal testing has helped scientists develop treatments for human ailments. But now the federal government is inching away from the controversial practice. KPBS SciTech reporter Thomas Fudge explores what that means for local research.
In a lab at the UC San Diego School of Medicine, we see a video of a human lung with a form of fibrosis, shown here in red. But this isn't really a lung, it's a miniature model of a lung made from human stem cells. It's called an organoid.
We now have a way to screen the drugs on this to reverse this exact condition, because it has been determined that without these cells, you cannot fibrose a lung, you cannot scar a lung.
Pradipta Ghosh is a professor of cellular medicine at UCSD who is dedicated to improving drug discovery by testing with human tissue. Ghosh says the problem with animal trials and the current system of drug approval is pretty clear.
We have a report card that we can't really ignore, can we? Our report card says we get it 9 out of 10 times wrong. That is a drug, at least.
Yes, about 90% of drugs under development fail in human clinical trials, the final stage of the approval process. Testing a new drug from end to end usually takes a decade and can cost more than $1 billion, whether it's eventually approved or not. And she says the shortcomings of animal testing is one problem. You see, people are not mice.
And we have evolved differently. We know our immune systems are vastly different.
The news of changing policies on drug trials were announced by the Food and Drug Administration and the National Institutes of Health last month.
We announced a dramatic reduction in animal testing at NIH and FDA.
The NIH announced it will create a new office to develop the use of non-animal approaches. Its director said, quote, "This human-based approach will accelerate innovation, improve healthcare outcomes, and mark a critical step forward for science." Pradipta Ghosh says she favors a tiered approach to drug development that includes organoid testing and computational analysis. But adopting new human-based forms of testing presents some challenges.
Cost is high. Skills, knowledge, limited to a few labs still in the world.
And this is all happening at a time when the Trump administration is proposing dramatic cuts, perhaps more than 40%, to the budget of the National Institutes of Health. To Ghosh, that's a problem.
How do you invest in something that is requires more skills, requires more resources, requires more infrastructure? Oh, and by the way, in the backdrop of less funding, that could be a little difficult task.
Some people still defend animal testing. The National Association of Biomedical Research said computational models and organoids are still, quote, not capable of fully replicating the intricacies of living systems. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
There's a growing campaign in San Diego to change a notorious intersection in University Heights. But as we saw earlier, money is tight. Andrew Bowen breaks down the costs, both human and financial.
If you've driven through the five-way intersection of El Cajon Boulevard, Park Boulevard, and Normal Street, you've probably experienced firsthand just how dangerous it can be. It's confusing and sees close calls almost daily. 2 years ago, a pedestrian named Josh Gilliland was struck and killed trying to cross the street here. The online petition is asking the City Transportation Department to do a traffic study and come up with options for safety improvements. Officials say the study would cost about $600,000. City Council member Stephen Whitburn says that's a cost the city can afford.
Parking meter rates went up this year. That will add tens of millions of dollars in revenue. We should use a portion of the new parking meter revenue to fund the study and begin improving this intersection to make it safer for pedestrians, for bicyclists, and for motorists.
City planning documents call for a roundabout at the intersection. And there's a potential model just a few miles away on Florida Street in Balboa Park. In 2022, the city installed what it calls a quick-build roundabout there. Instead of pouring new concrete, they drilled plastic bumps into the asphalt. That saved hundreds of thousands of dollars and delivered the project years faster than a more conventional design. Advocates say the city's budget deficit is precisely why a cheaper and faster improvement to this intersection is necessary.
We recognize that the city is facing serious financial challenges right now, and we appreciate the work being done to continue it moving regardless. But in tough times, especially in tough times, government must fulfill its core responsibilities, balancing power between the strong and the weak, building infrastructure, and protecting its people.
The City Council is due to vote on a budget for the next fiscal year in June. But safety improvements are urgent. A dog park next to the intersection recently closed after a driver crashed into the fencing. That's happened 3 times just in the past year. Andrew Bowen, KPBS News.
Andrew Bowen covers local government for KPBS and a whole lot more. He also hosts the podcast Freeway Exit about the impact freeways have had, and not just on local transportation and local communities. You can stream it on the KPBS YouTube page and wherever you get your podcasts. It was years in the making, and tonight the centerpiece of Chula Vista's Bayfront redevelopment project is now open. The project includes parks, open space, and a huge new hotel and convention center. Alexander Nguyen got an early look.
The chairs are laid out by the pool. The lazy river and slides are ready, and martini glasses polished and hung at the long-awaited $1.3 billion Gaylord Pacific.
One of the most highly anticipated events in the hospitality industry.
That anticipation, not just here, but nationwide. This is the 6th resort for Gaylord Hotels, and their largest yet. Gaylord Pacific Marketing and PR Director Pete Borum says guests can expect a larger-than-life experience.
Whatever you think of when you think of a hotel, this is bigger, it's bolder, it has a lot more interesting components to it.
Including 1,600 rooms, 12 bars and restaurants, and a 4.25-acre water park with a view of San Diego Bay.
It is going to be the town center for this community.
But getting here was a challenge. Plans to revitalize the Chula Vista Bayfront started in 2002. The California Coastal Commission approved the master plan in 2012.
COVID, inflation, interest rate rise, etc.
And the groundbreaking happened in 2022. Ira Mitzner is the CEO of Rita Development and Gaylord Pacific Managing Partners.
Dad wants to come with his son to go see a soccer or basketball game. They're going to come to our sports bar. Mom and daughter are going to come and have a spa day here.
The Gaylord Pacific is expected to be an economic development catalyst for the empty lots next door. The resort is already employing more than 800 people and expects to hire more than 1,600 when it's all said and done. Alexander Nguyen, KPBS News.
We hope you enjoyed this look at KPBS News this week. I'm John Carroll. Thanks for joining us.